of a 4-part panel series for the 2024 TCS New York City Marathon. I'm sure you are already aware of this, but tonight's event is going to be focusing on training, injuries, and sleep, the most important, I guess. So just some logistical information to get out of the way before we move into the panel. If you need an assistive listening device and you did not request one, you are still able to get one. Just go ahead and see some of my colleagues here to my right, I believe to your left. And accessible and gender neutral restrooms are available right behind us around the corner. And last but not least, there is a live stream going on right now on the New York Roadrunners YouTube page. So there are folks joining us on the live stream. You are able to go back and watch this recording at a later time. Just so you're aware, there are closed captions available on the live stream and on the recording. They are auto-generated, so some things we say here might not make sense in the closed captioning, just so you are aware. And we will take some audience questions later on in tonight's event. So if you have questions, hold on to those questions, and we'll give priority to the folks who are here in person. Then we'll move on to the questions from the audience online. And if you are wondering who I am, and you haven't been here before for one of our panels, my name is Saman Wakad. I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Social Responsibility Specialist here at New York Roadrunners. And I am the wannabe marathoner, I guess I can say. So I'm here to ask all the questions that you might be a little shy or nervous to ask. And for folks who are blind or low vision, we'll be providing some physical descriptions for ourselves. So I am a South Asian woman. I am wearing a dark blue headscarf, dark-rimmed black glasses. And I'm also wearing a dark blue jacket that has the NYRR and New Balance logos on the front. And now let's move into the important folks for tonight. First off, we'll start with Gemma Ward, who is a New York Roadrunners coach. So Gemma is an RRCA certified coach who has had a lifelong passion for running. She loves coaching and has coached runners of all ages with varying levels of experience. She is a dedicated coach who loves seeing athletes achieve their goals, and she loves sharing her passion for the sport. Gemma loves running anything from short distances on the track to the quieter trails and cross-country events to loud road races. Running has been a way to see the world. She has completed races and events across the globe. She's an experienced marathoner whose list of races and goals grow exponentially every year. Gemma?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am a white woman. I've got very messy hair right now. I am wearing a navy shirt which says Coach on it, and it has the NYRR logo.
Awesome. Thank you, Gemma. And are you running this year's New York City Marathon?
I am. I am pacing the 4-hour group. One of the coaches pacing the 4-hour group with Coach Steve down the back.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Round of applause for Steve.
And to Gemma's left, we have Shelby Harris, who is a licensed clinical psychologist in behavior sleep medicine. Dr. Shelby Harris is board certified in behavioral sleep medicine, BSM, by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, and treats a wide variety of sleep disorders. This includes insomnia, nightmares, circadian rhythm disorders, narcolepsy, and apnea treatment noncompliance, using evidence-based non-pharmacological treatments. Before going into private practice, Dr. Harris was the long-standing director of the Behavioral Sleep Medicine Program at the Sleep-Wake Disorder Center of Montefiore Medical Center. Dr. Harris.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks. I'm a white woman with, if you ask me, I say dark blonde hair. My daughter, who's 8, will call me out and say it's brown. It is longer below the shoulders. I'm wearing a black cardigan with a dark green shirt, black pants, and rainbow-colored sneakers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And are you running New York City this year?
I am indeed.
Wonderful. Thank you. Glad to have you back here. And to Dr. Shelby's left, last but not least, we have Mohammed Saad, who is a physical therapist at HSS. Mohammed is a physical therapist with Hospital for Special Surgery, focused on the treatment of surgical and non-surgical orthopedic clinical cases. He enjoys treating patients across the age and ability spectrum and finds fulfillment in helping individuals get back to their daily activities and athletes of all disciplines get back to their preferred sport. Mohammed also works with the performance team at HSS, conducting running mechanics assessments in the hopes of preventing overuse injuries. As an avid runner and triathlete, he's passionate about helping fellow endurance athletes meet their athletic goals. Mohammed?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. Excited to be here with you all this evening. I am an Egyptian male. I am wearing a black hat representing my home state's hockey team, the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm wearing a navy blue hoodie, zip-up hoodie, representing my employer, Hospital for Special Surgery, navy blue pants, and some tangerine orange colored shoes. And I just realized we are all wearing very dark colors, but bright personalities, so we got us covered.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Mohammed, are you running New York City?
I am, yes. I'm very excited, looking forward to it.
And I hear you're running 2 marathons?
I am, yes. So interestingly enough, I was originally just going to run Chicago, and then very fortunately got kind of a last-minute opportunity to run New York as of last week. So pretty new news for me.
That is awesome. Actually, all the folks on the panel, except for me, of course, are multi-marathoners. So we're very lucky to have all of them here tonight. To begin, let's get a show of hands. How many people are running their first marathon? Okay. And one over there. That is awesome. Congratulations, you got in. That's the very first step. And how many people have run 2 or more? How many folks have run New York City before? Okay, awesome. So now we have somewhat of an idea of who is in the live audience here. So to start off, does anybody know the date for the marathon? Make sure you know what date and time, because time changes that day.
For our benefit.
Hopefully. We are 7 weeks out, folks, so we are going to start by talking about what's happening with your training right now. So I am going to ask Gemma, first of all. So there's lots of runners going through higher mileage right now, mileage they may have never hit, especially given that we've seen there's a lot of first-time marathoners here. How should they be approaching those long miles? For many, it can seem unachievable or even daunting.
Yeah, well, firstly, congratulations. You're about to embark on something really exciting. And I can tell you one thing about it. It will be your best because it's going to be your first, and it's going to be your fastest, and it's going to be the most exciting, and it's going to be the best of everything. So really soak up the next few weeks. They may feel daunting, but it is really exciting. And come November 3rd, everything that you have done is just going to be a memory, and it's going to be just an all-out inspiring and exciting day, whether it is your first or your 10th or whatever marathon that is for you. Over the next few weeks, you're going to be reaching uncharted territory, so your runs are going to be getting longer. So my top advice for anyone is just take each run as it comes. So, plan, prepare, and go out for that run, but really focus on that run. So don't worry about tomorrow's run. Don't worry about yesterday's run. That may have been bad because it was hot. Maybe tomorrow's going to be, humid, but really focus on being in the moment, being present, and breaking it down into each mile. So don't get too far ahead of yourself. Oh man, I've got 10 to go, I've got 11 to go. Just focus on where you are at and really, soak it all up and enjoy it, because they are going to get longer, you are going to get tired, but that is part of the process. So enjoy that, because at November 3rd, when you've got that medal, it's done, okay? So really, even though it seems like a lot, try and enjoy the little moments in that 18, that 20-mile run. Really embrace that. Break it down and enjoy it.
Great, thank you, Gemma. And Dr. Shelby, for you, let's start off with the importance of sleep, obviously. Most important, after these long runs. So how do we not me, all of those folks, how do they get the proper sleep, and how does it make them a better runner?
So sleep is really, I feel like I'm constantly saying this, but sleep is super important for recovery. When we are sleeping, and let's just say, take the person who is ideally getting about the same amount of sleep, as much as they should, every single night or most nights of the week. When you're going into the deeper stages of sleep throughout the night, but most of it's in the first third of the night, that's when you're actually releasing human growth hormone. That's when your body is actually growing. That's when muscle repair is happening. So it's super duper important. And also the hormones of ghrelin and leptin, the thing that ghrelin makes us want to eat more, leptin makes us stop eating. enough sleep keeps that more in check, because I don't know about you, but the more your miles start to go up and up and up, the hungrier you're going to be getting. So it helps to kind of keep things, I mean, you're going to want to eat and fuel yourself, but it's going to keep things a little bit more in check. Also, when you need to prioritize sleep right now as our miles start to go up, because it will help with injury risk as well. So we do know that when people are sleep deprived, going into longer runs, speed work sessions, if you're doing any of those, you're at a higher risk of any sort of injury. So if you're sleeping well, you're helping with that recovery, and your balance, coordination, all that's going to be better. So.
Thank you. So folks should be prioritizing sleep. Does that mean they should be sleeping longer if that's what their body's calling for, or just sleeping the same amount of time?
So you got to follow your lead. So I remember when I was running my first or second marathons, I was sleeping like an hour more than I had ever slept before. So follow the lead. Try to see, though, if you're waking up a lot in the middle of the night and you're having, like, you sleep a lot or you fall asleep really early, but then you're up for an hour or two in the middle of the night, then maybe that's not ideal. But don't underestimate the importance of a nap. If you're someone who doesn't have insomnia at night, I notice that I'm starting to need to take a nap, and it's hard. If you have family, work, commitments, a 20-minute nap or even an hour and a half, 20 minutes or an hour and a half, so you're not waking up super groggy, can be really helpful for kind of getting through those longer mile days to help you with recovery and repair.
Wonderful. Power naps can be amazing.
Yep.
So I agree with that. And Mohammed, what kind of workouts, stretching or strength training should runners be doing in the next 6 weeks to avoid injury?
Yeah, that's a great question. So 6 weeks, you're over the hump, you're right? You're more than halfway through your training plan. But that doesn't mean you're more than halfway through the mileage you're going to run, right? So you can think of like your training plan kind of like the marathon itself. Like the common metaphor we hear is when you get to 20 miles in the marathon, you're halfway there, which, logistically doesn't really make sense, but the toll it takes on your body makes perfect sense. So think of that kind of the same analogy applied to your training. Right now, you're a little more than halfway through time-wise your training, but you've still got a lot of miles to run. So a couple of things to keep in mind is the importance of, maintaining a healthy body, right? So as those miles start to creep up, you probably still have one or two of those longest runs kind of ahead of you on the calendar. It's really important to, one, like Dr. Shelby said, listen to your body with regards to sleep, but also with regards to those little aches and pains you might be feeling. Really important to be able to kind of discern the difference between I'm in pain because I'm sore from running 20 miles versus I'm in pain because I have shin splints or, I have an overuse injury. So listening to your body and being able to weed out the differences between the soreness you should be feeling versus the aches and pains that may creep up to turn into something a little bit bigger. So listen to your body is kind of pretty important. The other thing to start considering is you're probably maybe 9-10 weeks into your training at this point, having run maybe roughly 30 to 40 miles a week. Keep in mind how many cumulative miles that is on the shoes that you've been wearing, right? So generally, we recommend replacing your shoes around 300 to 400 miles. You're probably around that time frame where maybe those shoes aren't doing as good of a job as absorbing some of the impact. So now your soft tissue and the bones in your lower extremity have to absorb that impact. So replacing shoes, this is a great time to start thinking about that so you can be accustomed to whatever new shoe you're going to be running in for the remainder of your training. With regards to workouts, I would not encourage trying anything drastically new, right? So I wouldn't say this is the perfect time to start that CrossFit routine that you've really been wanting to try, or maybe you decide now's the time I'm going to really focus on like speed interval workouts and that sort of thing if you've never done it before. But on the flip side, you still have 7 weeks, and a lot of research indicates that it takes about 2 to 4 weeks for like neural adaptations to kick in from a strength training program. So while I wouldn't encourage trying something drastically new like CrossFit, this is a pretty good opportune time to start taking advantage of maybe some attempt at strength training, whether that's simple body weight lunges or squats, something that's really going to target the lower extremity muscles without introducing something completely new that could put you at risk for an injury. So incorporating some semblance of strength training, if it's something you're interested in doing, now would be a good time to do that before those last few weeks when you don't really want to introduce anything new. So we still have 6-7 weeks before a lot of the fall marathons. It takes roughly 2 to 4 weeks to start to take care of the advantages of those strength training routines. So now would be a good time to do that. And then one last thing, never, never, never underestimate the importance of mobility, right? As runners, we tend to prioritize, if we're tight on time, just getting the mileage in, but kind of neglecting a lot of the ancillary work like foam rolling or stretching or any sort of mobility routine. Now, with several weeks to go, is a great opportunity to start incorporating that before, after your runs, just to maintain that mobility. So later on, when the miles do start, increasing for those last few long runs, you don't realize, wow, I feel really tight in this particular area. Just incorporating some sort of mobility and stretching work this early on.
Awesome. That was a very comprehensive answer, Mohammed. Thank you. So now that we have gotten a little bit of info from our panelists on where folks should be right now, let's talk about where we're headed, or where you all are headed. So Mohammed, we'll go back to you for this first. Some runners in this room, or those watching online, or those watching the recording later, might be injured. Statistically, somebody amongst this group is injured, right? So some might be injured only a little bit, some might be injured a little more. Talk to us about when a runner should be seeing a physical therapist and how they should adjust their training.
Yeah, excellent question. So kind of touched on this in my last response. But again, really important to discern what is the difference between, okay, my calves are really sore because I ran a really hilly run yesterday, versus my shins are really sore and they hurt with every single step, right? Being able to differentiate between the normal aches and pains of running high mileage versus those sharp, acute, injury-prone pains. So a couple things to keep in mind is, if something is preventing you entirely from running, that's probably a good indicator that you should stop or scale back the amount of running that you're doing, right? If it hurts from the very first step, through mile 1, mile 5, whatever it is, that's usually an indication your body's telling you, hey, we need a break, we need to scale back. If it's one of those things where, I get to mile 6 or 7 and I start feeling a little ache or pain, then maybe it's something that we need to just temporarily, course correct and say, okay, let's scale back the volume that you're doing, maybe supplement it with some cross training, go see a PT or go see some sort of healthcare specialist to advise on what exactly is causing this pain, and then readjust our training plan. This is also a really good opportunity to emphasize the utility of cross training. Right? Let's say hypothetically you have a minor ache or pain that you can still run through. It's throwing a little hiccup in your training. One of the absolute best things to maintain some of that fitness, even if you're scaling back on the mileage, is cross training. Right? Elliptical can be really useful. Biking can be a really useful resource. Maintaining that cardiovascular adaptation without putting a lot of stress on the soft tissue or on the bones in your lower extremities. So don't immediately think like, oh, I've got this ache or this pain, I need to shut it down, there goes my dream of running this fall marathon. Supplement it with some cross training. And when to see a healthcare provider, kind of the second half of that question, I would say if it's something, sharp, acute pain that you feel with every single step, that's usually kind of an emergent case. Like, I would recommend going to see someone pretty immediately. If it's something that you feel like you can run through, I would say try and schedule something with maybe a massage therapist, or maybe a lot of people really like chiropractics, something like that. See if that provides some semblance of aid. But ultimately, I think maybe a physical therapy assessment, looking at you holistically and getting understanding of how you move. Generally, physical therapists kind of colloquially call themselves movement experts, right? Getting someone to look at you, see how you move, identify what is the source of this issue, could hopefully prevent a bigger injury down the line.
Great, thank you, Mohammed. Next, Gemma. Many runners are now, or they'll be hitting their highest mileage, 18 to 20 miles, in the coming weeks. Some may have already the ones who are running multiple marathons, right? So what are the best ways for folks to prepare for this distance?
Awesome. Hopefully we're hitting these big miles. All right, so really important that you're getting enough rest, which Dr. Shelby has spoken about, in that week leading up to that long run. So you've got a lot of long runs, so you're going to need to have a lot of rest before and after, not during, those long runs. So that's going to be really important. So banking extra time during the week is going to be really helpful. Maybe saying no to some of those social plans that you have booked in your calendar, especially with those longer runs approaching. You're busy, you can't go out that night because you're watching TV relaxing, okay? That's your new plan. So making sure you're getting enough rest. I can recommend documentaries afterwards, great ones on Netflix. And then making sure you are also fueling really well. So fueling your body for those longer runs that you are going to be, doing that 16, that 18, that possibly that 20-mile long run. So that's not just the fuel you're putting in your body on the run, the gels, the nutrition that you're taking. That's the fuel that you're having in the morning. That's the fuel you're having the night before, the day before that, making sure that it works with you. Because if it doesn't work with you in your training, it's probably not going to work for you November 3rd. So this is a really good opportunity for you to practice that fueling, that strategy. If it works for you, then that's great. If it doesn't work for you, then try something new. We've still got around 8 weeks left to figure out what is perfect for you. So that nutrition is going to be really key. And then on the actual run, your long runs are not designed to be at race pace. So if you plan on running that 4-hour marathon, which I'm pacing on November 3rd, that's a 9:09 breakdown mile. You should not be hitting 9:09 for your long runs. So adding on a little bit extra, 30 seconds is a good buffer. You're wanting to run a little bit slower than what you plan on running race day. Having a few miles in there that at that goal race pace is okay, but you're wanting to be out there for a longer period of time. This is going to help your body adapt without that added strain of that race day pace. That's going to be really important for you on the long runs. So if it's a little slower because it's a little humid out, that's actually perfect. It's fine. Make sure you're taking those nutrition items, whatever's working for you. Shop around for that. But yeah, making sure they're nice and slow. Enjoy. Have them at a conversational place. Go with a friend. Go with a group of runners. But run slow to run fast November 3rd.
Thanks, Coach Emma. We're going to ask you at the end what date the marathon is. So next, Dr. Shelby. Many folks in the room might not be getting quality sleep, as Gemma alluded to. What are some reasons for this, and how can folks improve the sleep that they are getting?
So the first thing we always think about is people often get fixated on 8 hours. I have to get 8 hours, right? It's more about first quality than quantity. If you're getting 8 hours of very broken, kind of unrestorative sleep, it's not going to be as great for you. So let's work on the quality first. So the first thing I actually always do, and I'd never thought about this one before, but every night before a long run, actually before any workout, simple. We always talk about it, but not everyone does it. Put your clothes out. Put the shoes out, put everything out the night before. And before the long runs, now is the time, the night before, to get all your hydration, your nutrition, everything ready. I even I have oatmeal in the morning, overnight oats. I get that ready so that I take the least amount of time in the morning so I'm not cutting out from sleep as much, okay? So that's the first thing. Quality, there are a few things you can do right now that are gonna help bump up that quality first and foremost. So it's not fun, it's not a sexy answer, it just isn't. So quality is going to be limiting alcohol, especially within 3 hours of bedtime, because you might fall asleep well with alcohol, but it's going to dehydrate you and cause more awakenings throughout the night. You want to work on limiting the water or the liquids within 3 hours of going to bed, because you're going to wake up more to use the bathroom. So if you're exercising more and you're getting very thirsty towards the evening, you might not be hydrating enough during the day. So consider really front-loading some of that liquid intake during the day, and really try to cut it off by 3 hours before bed. A snack before bed is fine. A lot of people say no eating, many, many hours. Within 3 hours, you want to cut off heavy meals, if possible. But 1 hour before bed, I always have like a sugar-free Greek yogurt. I put a little bit of peanut butter in it and some raspberries. And that fiber is helpful for me, a little bit of protein in there. Find something if you do tend to I get hungry as the miles go up. Probably making that case a lot today. So really try to have a snack if you can, because you won't wake up hungry as much in the middle of the night. Then there's the basics of thinking about the room that you're in, right? Quiet, dark, cool, comfortable, right? So what can you look around your room tonight and think, is your room somewhere that you want to be? Or is half your bed like covered in all your clothes from the week and your laundry, which many of us are? Really try to make it a place that you want to be in your bed. You might not, New York City apartments are tiny, so you might not be able to do your whole room, but just your bed. Have it be comfortable. Look at your sheets. Are your sheets comfortable? Your pillows, are they supportive? It's not one size fits all for pillows and mattresses. Is that a little bit of an investment that you can make now to help support your neck, your head, based on how you're sleeping? And then, cool. right? So everyone will say, you'll hear like 67 degrees. That really it changes based on the humidity level. So whatever is cool for you, but ideally somewhere in the low to high 60s. It's a range for people. And if you're someone who tends to go to bed and you're cold, but then you wake up hot in the middle of the night, this is not a very pretty answer, but sleep with socks on. I do that myself. I'm like freezing at bedtime, but then I wake up hot, I take the socks off. That can help you to fall asleep a little bit better. Dark is really important, so the darker, the better. One thing I want everyone to try right now is close your eyes and take your hands and wave them right in front of your eyes. And if you can see your hand, you can kind of see your hand through your eyelids, right, blocking the light. That's a test for you in your room in the morning when you get up. If you can, with your windows and your shades closed, if you can still see your hand kind of waving, your room actually is probably a bit too light. If there's any fear of the dark, anything like that, that's a different story. Night lights are okay, but try to make it as dark as you can, and you want to make it as quiet as possible. So white noise machine, there are lots of great earplugs on the market. The foam ones are not so great. Silicone ones are a cheap one to try for swimmers. You can try that first, and then you can go up the like price-wise market if you want. And then the one other thing is like if you have a significant other who's snoring, or someone, a dog, someone else who's in bed keeping you awake, that's a conversation that has to be had, that maybe that person should be evaluated, possibly, and maybe trying to mitigate some of the noise initially just so you can prioritize sleep. And then the other thing is like quantity, like we were saying. So try to get more as often as you can. The long run the next morning is not a night to get like 5 hours of sleep because you got to get up so early. So maybe try to find like a nice middle ground of what your bedtime, wake time might be over the next few weeks so you can kind of not have such harsh adjustments back and forth. I'm not fun during marathon season. Everyone knows that like a Friday night when my long run Saturday, I am home, I'm watching Netflix documentaries, and like I'm getting up early. That's just the priority.
So we do have limited time tonight, but you can come and ask them about their documentary recommendations later. A lot of great advice there, Dr. Shelby. Thank you. Stuff that can help folks not just training for marathon, but also afterwards. I know we're sharing a lot of information in the panel. Just want to remind you that this is being live streamed. It is also being recorded, so you'll be able to go back to the New York Roadrunners YouTube page at a later time and look through the recording, listen to it on 2x speed if you want. Also wanted to let you know that Coach Steve is monitoring the chat on the live stream. So if you're adding any questions, commentary in there, he will be monitoring that. And we will move into audience Q&A in a little bit. So let's move on to our next question. So race week is a nervous time for athletes. I'm sure some folks have already experienced that before when they run races. So let's spend some time making sure all of you folks can get the most out of that week, which is in 6 weeks, because marathon is in 7 weeks. So Dr. Shelby, we'll start with you. Should runners be, so we've talked a little bit about this already, but should runners be adjusting their sleep closer to the race? Should they be sleeping more race week or race night? I know we haven't necessarily talked about race night. Yeah. And how does one sleep with the nerves and excitement?
Great question. So this is the time to start working on building up your sleep. So you have more of it in, essentially, you're going in with a good grounding of your sleep. Perfection is not the key. It's not going to happen. I mean, I don't sleep perfect every night. Just aim for being content with your sleep at least 5 nights a week, where you're getting enough. Then, as you go into race week, the key is earlier in the week to try and get as much sleep as you can, and knowing that the night before the race or even 2 nights before the race, it's going to be hard. It's very hard for many people, myself included, to sleep well. It's we always say the hay is in the barn during taper. Taper's the time to build the sleep. Don't freak out. The adrenaline will carry you race day. It will. It will be good. Put in the time now.
Awesome. And I think we may have talked about this in a previous panel, but do you recommend any way for folks to log their sleep?
If you use anything to track your sleep, the rings, the watches, that's all good for tracking how much sleep you're getting. Don't get bogged down in the sleep staging. So deep sleep, light sleep, core sleep, REM, that stuff is not as accurate as you would think it would be. So don't get into that. Just if you want to see how consistent you are and if you're making time for sleep, they're great for that.
Okay, awesome. And Mohammed, so with mileage and intensity being lower than normal for folks race week, what are some of the best ways runners can have fresh legs race week?
Yeah, great question. So keeping in mind that with 1 week left until the race, obviously your mileage is a lot lower. And also keeping in mind that for a lot of us, we probably work desk jobs where we're seated for the majority of the day. So with that comes a little bit of stiffness. right? Running is probably your primary form of movement during the lead up to the race. So keeping in mind, now that you're not running as much, you're gonna have to find other ways to stay limber, stay mobile. So this is really the ideal time to really double down on foam rolling, double down on stretching. If you're sitting at your desk all day for work, and now instead of running an hour after work for some of those longer runs, now you're running maybe 15 or 20 minutes, that's a lot less range of motion, a lot less mobility that's going through your hips and your knees and your ankles. So now is a great time to take that extra time that you have that you're not spending running to really focus on maintaining some mobility in all of those joints that are going to be going under a lot of stress and a lot of load later that week. The other thing to keep in mind is, obviously, one of our favorite things as runners is carb loading, right? So that last week when your carbohydrate intake does start to increase, the whole purpose of carbohydrate intake is to store glycogen in your muscles. With every gram of carbohydrate that your muscles store, you store about 3 grams of water. So with that comes a little bit of stiffness, right? Your muscles are now kind of absorbing a lot of glycogen and a lot of water. So that's another reason to really maintain some of that mobility. Your muscles might inherently just become a little bit more stiff from that glycogen and water that they're storing. Again, I will reiterate that the metaphor that goes for not trying anything new on race day also applies to this point in your training. Think of this as race day with regards to the maybe 16 or 18 weeks that you've spent training. You don't want to try anything drastically new, right? You know, this is not the time to break out those brand new shoes and start running in those. This is not the time to, you know, incorporate a brand new strength training regimen now that you have all this time that you're not spending running. This is the time to really reinforce making sure that, you know, your mobility feels good, your joints feel nice and loose, your muscles feel nice and loose, and making sure that since we're not running as much, and this is a lot of times where some of that movement and activity comes from, we're supplementing it with a little bit of foam rolling, a little bit of stretching, that sort of thing.
Thanks, Mohammed. And Coach Gemma, so Dr. Shelby and Mohammed alluded to this a little bit, but, you know, mileage is going to be low that race week. So what should a runner's mileage look like race week? And with the mix of Expo, and for those of you who don't know about the Expo, it's pretty exciting, and also folks possibly traveling to New York City, how should one be looking at their training that week?
Yeah, race week is so exciting. There's so much happening. We're all here. We're staying here. We've got people coming into the city for race week. It doesn't mean you stop running. Your taper is not, okay, I've done the training and now I'm just going to chill. You're still going to keep moving. You want to keep moving. You know, chatting to other people is great, but some people may be feeling really awesome. They're feeling really, you know, rested. You may not be. I don't always feel great when I'm tapering, but it's really important to trust that taper. It's going to be very reduced miles, very easy miles. We're not going to be adding any extra speed work that's going to help us race week, okay? We're going to be keeping it really light, really peppy, and we're just going to be really relaxing into that week. The expo is really fun. It's open 3 days. You are not going to be there all 3 days. You're going to go for your slot. You're going to get in. You're going to have a little look around and then get home, watch some more Netflix. It's a really good opportunity to catch up on television. But really, that race week, you really need to focus on trusting that taper. A lot of the athletes out there think, I need to do more. Now is not the time to do more. Now is the time to do less, okay? So really trust your training, trust that process. You're going to keep running, but stay really calm. Your training is done at this point. All you have is a little street party of 26.2 miles on the Sunday, okay?
The biggest street party in New York City. Is there a specific number of miles they should be getting in?
So you're going to really follow that training plan. This is going to be reduced 50 to 70% less than what you have been doing in your training. So every runner is going to have a very different amount of mileage. You're not going to be doing long miles, but you're going to be getting a few in. That's really a good opportunity to talk to your coach or talk to look at the plan, what you've been doing, and it's going to give you a reduced amount of miles for that week. Nothing you do race week is going to increase that speed on race day unless you decide to go out and run 20 miles on Thursday, and then that's going to seriously reduce that speed on race day. So really focus on that taper, 50 to 70%-ish less than what you've been doing in your training.
Great, thank you. So before we move into audience Q&A, let's get some final bits of advice from our panelists. Coach Gemma, we'll start with you. Any advice for our first-time runners, which the room here is full of?
enjoy it. It's going to be the best day. You only get one first marathon and you have picked the best one. It is the most amount of fun. Enjoy it. Enjoy the whole day, starting from the expo, I should say, to waking up race morning, going to Staten Island and just running all 5 boroughs. Just really enjoy it. It can be very emotional at the end, and just embrace everything race day gives you and wear that medal with pride for at least 1 month.
No less.
No less.
No less. You can wear it for longer if you want. And make sure you get it on your loved ones' calendars, whoever's coming out there to cheer for you, November 3rd, folks. And Dr. Shelby, advice on making sure that folks, we keep talking about sleep, but it's so important, that this sleep and recovery is quality.
Yeah. We're supposed to spend a third of our lives sleeping, so, The one thing to keep in mind is leg cramps. So if you notice that you're having leg cramps a good amount, especially leg cramps, a lot of people start having leg cramps at night, or that might wake them up out of sleep. And then there's also something that's related, a little different, restless leg syndrome. It happens in men and women especially. I get it myself. You might find that it's like this creepy crawly feeling, especially after a long run. It's hard to settle down to go to sleep because of your legs being really active. So keep an eye out for that. It could sometimes, if you can start with like limiting caffeine within 8 to 12 hours of bed, that can worsen it. Dehydration can worsen these things. And then think about electrolytes. Make sure you're having electrolytes. All that stuff can worsen those things. And do the baths earlier, but a hot bath about an hour and a half before bed can help really relax your legs. And if none of that stuff is helping, you're losing sleep because your legs are really bothering you, talk to your doctor. It can be something else. Sometimes it's even like an iron deficiency, and some iron supplementation can help. Not saying to take them. It's always something to talk with your doctor about.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mohammed, any advice on staying injury-free and ready to race?
Yeah, I'll just kind of reiterate a few points that I made earlier. Listen to your body, right? Getting to the starting line is the goal, and just running the race is the celebration, right? So you don't want to forfeit that goal just because you're so excited about the celebration. Listen to your body in these next 7 weeks and, course correct as necessary. This is not, we're not saying if you start to feel a little ache or pain here, your race is completely shot. This is the time where you can still salvage if there's something that's bothering you. So listen to your body, go see someone, a physical therapist or, your preferred healthcare provider, whatever that may be, to take care of that so that you're not, you have the opportunity to celebrate on that race day. And that also applies for during the race as well. If you get to late in the race and you start feeling some really sharp pains, as much as your goal is to finish that race, you don't want to, forfeit any future plans of racing, any future opportunities of running. I can almost guarantee for those of you that are running your first marathon this fall, it will probably not be your last. You will get hooked, right? So you don't want to, pay the price later down the road with something that could have maybe been just a disappointment at that particular moment. So definitely listen to your body from now leading up to the race day and leading up to the race day itself. And then finally, like I said, this is probably not your last race. After the race itself, take that opportunity, one, to celebrate your accomplishments, but also scale things back. Recovery, like Dr. Shelby said, sleep is really, really vital for recovery, but also rest after such a big training block is going to be vital. And that can usually be the opportune time to get in and see a physical therapist, right? If your plan is to maybe start training again later in the winter for a spring marathon, this is the perfect time to go, have someone take a look at how you're running. Maybe if something that wasn't preventing you entirely from running, but was affecting your gait or your stride, that's the ideal time to go in, have someone take a look, maybe make some recommendations, whether it's a mobility issue or a strength issue. That way, as you pursue your next marathon, you can go into it feeling even more confident and even stronger.
Great, thank you, Mohammed. So now, folks, we're going to move into audience Q&A. We'll start with folks in the audience here and then take some questions from the folks online. Please let us know your name if you would like, if this is your first time running New York City, and then try to keep your questions brief, please.
Is this thing on? Okay, great. This is my first marathon. I'm hearing a lot about 30 seconds less than race pace. So I'm wondering how and why. So why would we do that? And if so, then how do we know that we're prepared when the day comes if we've never done that before, which feels like something we all want to do. We all want to know we're ready. Cool?
Because
Make
we
sense?
said so.
Okay, cool.
I think firstly, it's your first marathon, so going into this with maybe not an expectation of a time, just expect to have a good time, have fun, enjoy it, but running slow to run fast is going to really help you. If you are adding strain onto your body and these long runs are feeling, really, really hard and exhausting and you're finishing them feeling depleted, that's not what you want. You want to finish these long runs thinking, okay, I could have done maybe a little bit more, but I'm not going to do that because I'm going to save that for later on. So running a little bit slower during that. 30 seconds is a rule. There's a window. It doesn't have to be exactly 30 seconds. So if it's 9:09, you don't have to run 8:40 to whatever the 30 seconds below that is. But running it a little slower is going to help your body adapt to that added strain that possibly you have not run before. And that's for all of our runners. So it's going to help your body adapt to the longer distance, running slower. And then on race day, you're going to be feeling great. I promise you.
I'm also guessing you don't run marathon or run your training runs with like hundreds of thousands of people cheering you on the whole time. So the adrenaline is a very different animal too.
One other thing to keep in mind is like if your long run, for example, is on a Saturday or Sunday, right? Think of all the cumulative fatigue you have from Monday to Sunday, whereas on race day, because you've tapered, you likely have a lot more energy stored for that longer, final race.
Thank you.
I'm coming. Hang on.
Hi, I'm Felicia. First marathon. I'm having trouble with my fueling. I find myself running home, eating half a sandwich, and then continuing on to get to like mile 18. I guess, is there a gel you recommend that's like really gonna fill me up?
I love sandwiches.
Gemma, can you also talk about bonking, how to avoid bonking with gels? Because someone asked that online.
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, so both questions.
Two-parter.
Two-parter.
This is a twofer. All right, so firstly, making sure you're eating enough race week, long run week. So making sure you're fueling really well the days before. So that's extra protein, extra carbohydrates, hydrating as well. And then you can go to any of the, shops in the city that sell like different gels. We have SIS on course. If you like that, they're going to be on course for you to use this year. But you can go and try a whole bunch. Not all of them are going to agree with you, okay? So that's really important to remember. Try one at a time. So read the back of the pack. If it says every 45 minutes, I'd run off time versus off a distance. So every 45 minutes, you're wanting to consume that every 45 minutes. Some say an hour, some say every 20 minutes. So making sure you're reading that pack and following those instructions on these long runs because they are slower than that goal race pace. You may be thinking, oh, I feel great. I don't need to have this gel. And then a few minutes later, you're like, oh, I really needed that gel. So make sure that you follow that. And then on race day, follow that same strategy, even if you're feeling good. Try loads of different, this is a good time to try different things. And then you'll see what really works for you, what doesn't work for you. If it's boring and you're like, oh yeah, I feel fine, I'm like carrying on running, this is great, and I'm taking my gel every 40 minutes, that probably means it's working for you. If you're not and you're thinking, I am so hungry, I need to eat like an entire pizza or an entire sandwich, I think that's probably not working for you, so maybe try something different.
And what about like the morning of, right? So
Morning of, making sure, again, it's something that works for you. If it's a bagel, if it's oats, whatever it is that works for you, making sure you're getting enough food 90-ish minutes before you go out on that long run. And keep it the same. If it's working, don't try change it, okay? If it works for you, that's really good. If you're really sick of something by race day, that's good, okay? You can switch later. You don't have to have a bagel for like a few weeks, I promise.
You're going to live a boring life for the next 7 weeks.
Also, keep in mind, like the purpose of a gel is not to make you feel full. It's to just replenish the amount of energy that you're, using during the race. So, might be important to play around now that you still have a few weeks with how much you're eating before racing. Right? Dr. Shelby said she prepares her overnight oats. Have something with some sustenance to it that's, going to tide you over. Eating it long enough before your run to where it's not sloshing around in your stomach, but it's keeping you feeling sustained and full, and then using those gels just to top off your energy stores as you're running, not necessarily to, oh, I'm hungry, let me eat a gel.
Thank you, everyone.
Hi, I'm Beth. I'm running my first marathon in New York, and I'm super excited. I have a question about that race village while we're waiting there. and I wanted to ask about nutrition and stretching. So there is food there, I've heard, and coffee. Stay away from it, partake, and then what are some stretches that you recommend while we're waiting?
I would say pack some food to go, like an old school sandwich bag of lunch. Pack something that you know has worked for you. If you haven't tried the food and you go and have a donut race day morning or whatever they have, it might not agree with you. There's coffee. We've all had coffee. If you've had coffee before your long runs, that's fine. But yeah, pack some extra food. It's a second breakfast. You're going to probably be hungry when you wake up race day morning, so you're going to want to eat. And then you're going to be at the village for a while before you get going. So I pack some food for the bus, and then I pack some food for when I'm sitting around in the village, especially if you're on one of the later waves. So packing food to eat is going to be really important for you, so you're not hungry when you get started, because you don't want to start the marathon hungry.
Coffee's fine. Like, drink coffee now. Just try to limit it within 8 hours of bed, but drink it that morning if you're used to having it. If you feel like it gives you that energy, fine. And if it doesn't give you GI distress and stuff.
Yeah, and also keeping in mind timing, right? If you're used to waking up, having coffee an hour later, going for your run, but you're going to be in the race village for 3 hours, maybe it is a good idea to postpone your coffee until you're in the village. But then also not trying anything new, right? If you don't know what food is going to be offered in the race village, but you know, I absolutely need my everything bagel with peanut butter, which is kind of a weird combination, maybe bring that with you, right? Just don't say, oh, they have food at the race village, I'll just wait until I get there to eat. Maybe have a plan, and then work accordingly. And then to the other half of your question about, yes, you're probably going to be in the race village potentially for a few hours before your wave starts, but fortunately, usually we have an idea as to what time our wave starts. So that's a good way to kind of start backwards planning as to, okay, I know I usually do my long runs at 8 a.m. I start my mobility routine, whether it's dynamic stretching, static stretching. I like to do some lunges or some squats 30 minutes before I run. Keep that in mind. If your wave is at 10:30, then 10 o'clock is the time to start doing that. But also keeping in mind that if you get to the race village at 6 a.m. and your wave's not until 10 a.m., it's pretty important to kind of all throughout those 4 hours maintain some sort of movement, right? Don't just sit there unless you find a way to take a nap, which I'm sure Dr. Shelby would endorse. Stay moving, right? You don't want to get there, immediately get really stiff from having sat on a bus or sat on the train, and then go sit for hours and then immediately get up and start running. Find a way to, sprinkle in some movement, whether it's stretching. Sometimes people will even bring like a foam roller and just leave it there. But backwards plan and know what works for you. If you stretch 30 minutes before your long runs, wait until 30 minutes before your wave goes off and start your movement routine.
Thanks, everyone. We have another question from the audience.
Hi, I'm Jessie. I am hoping to run my first marathon. I am working through a knee injury with a physical therapist, so I appreciate this talk. In terms of replacing like your runs with stationary biking or elliptical, should you say, okay, like my long run this week was going to be 2.5 hours. Should you be on the bike for 2.5 hours?
That's generally the kind of loose rule of thumb that I follow. So if your long run was, let's say, 18 miles and it was going to take you 3 hours to run that, you want to do some sort of cardiovascular stimulus that's going to take you the same amount of time. I know a lot of times like an elliptical will have a mileage counter on it. I would probably err more towards the side of time. One of the things that we always say is like time on feet is really important, which also applies to like race week. You don't want to spend so much time on your feet that you're fatigued. But a similar strategy applies to the cross training that you do. So whether it's a stationary bike or an elliptical, something that's less load bearing, usually try and accommodate the same amount of time. But also keeping in mind, like if you're doing maybe some harder intervals on that bike or on the elliptical, also go by rate of perceived effort, right? If you know what maybe in a previous training cycle, what 18 miles felt like, the level of fatigue that you felt, but it only takes you 2 hours of cycling to get that same level of fatigue, then a rate of perceived exertion can be a really helpful tool as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. I think we're going to take one question from our online audience first, and then we'll come back to the folks here.
We have so many questions online. Hang on a second.
We always do.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Let me just find one quickly. for Gemma, we have some people not worried, but questioning how to get from the ferry to the bus to the start line. Can you kind of talk about that trajectory? People who've never done the ferry before and the process of getting to the start line.
All right, just follow the crowd.
That's what I said, but they wanted more information.
There's over 50,000 runners, so just know where you are going, and there'll be people there too. Now, you're going to get confirmation forms, so you will have selected a bus or you would have selected one of the ferries. Really simple. The bus, you're going to go to where it tells you to go in the morning, and then you're going to line up and follow the line, and that's going to pop you on a bus, and that's going to take you all the way down to the starting village. Really simple. Also really simple is the ferry. So you're going to make your way down to the Staten Island ferry. You're going to wave hi to the Statue of Liberty as you pass by. You're going to get off. You're going to line up, and you're going to get on a bus that's going to take you to that starting village. And it's going to be really clearly color-coded. So all of you are going to have a bib. It's going to have a color on it, and you're just going to look for the starting village that has that color on it. Okay? It's really simple. Follow the crowds. Easy.
It sounds very simple. There will be a lot more information available for you at the expo where you'll go to pick up your bibs. You will not be coming to the run center to pick up bibs for the marathon. You'll have a lot more information there. There will be folks there to answer your questions. And as Gemma said, there are tens of thousands of people, but we also have thousands of volunteers that will be there to help you, assist you in addition to staff. So try not to stress yourself out about that stuff. Any other questions online, Coach Steve, that we want to tackle right now?
We'll do one more online. For Mohammed, someone asked, do you recommend an ice bath after long runs? Maybe talk about the pros and benefits of ice baths.
Yeah, so it's really personal preference. I get in the clinic people asking me all the time, should I heat this? Should I ice this? Ultimately, the research indicates it's really personal preference. So my general rule of thumb is if you are really achy, really sore, and you find some relief that's going to, help you get out the door the next day or 2 days later, then an ice bath is awesome. Some people say that, that inflammation, that swelling, that soreness is your body's response of repairing damaged tissue, right? So when we run, we break down our muscles, and then the process of recovering is when they get stronger. Right? Some people say, well, if an ice bath is subsiding that inflammation, then I don't get that, growth stimulus response. Ultimately, it's really what works for you. If an ice bath is what allows you to take that next recovery day and then get right back out the door that Monday or Tuesday, I'm all for it. If you're one of those people that prefers heat, right? A lot of people say, I feel really stiff in the morning. I've been sleeping hopefully for 8+ hours. At night, I feel a little bit stiff, but putting a heat pack on my back or on my neck or on my hip really helps me feel a little bit more mobile. Go for it. One thing that I found really helps is after a run, if a joint or something is achy and sore and you're not going to be doing anything, you're going to sit back and watch that Netflix documentary, you're not going to be moving as much, put some ice on it. Calm down that inflammation if it provides some relief. Whereas if you're about to do something active, you're going to be a little bit more mobile. You don't want to start running on a cold, tight, stiff muscle. So that's when heat would generally be a little bit more applicable. So ice baths, personal preference, heat, same idea. If it works for you, great, keep doing it.
Thank you. After today, everybody's going to get 8 hours of quality sleep and watch some Netflix documentaries. I saw a hand up right there.
All right, here? All right, here you go.
Hi, I'm running my first marathon as well. So I saw online there's this rule of thumb about limiting your training to about 3 hours. But what if your 18 and 20 milers are going to exceed that by more than just a trivial amount of time? Which should you prioritize? Thank you.
Yeah, so there's been studies that the benefits of running longer than 3 hours 15 in your training is just going to take more out of you the next day, later that day. And so running for 3 hours 15 versus running off time. So at group training for New York Road Runners, we don't run off distance. So our long runs are time-based. So 2 hours, and we increase it in terms of that mileage, in time instead of distance. So that's a really good way of training. If you're going to be out there for longer, I would send, my runners that are going to be looking at a slower marathon time, I'd be putting them on time-based plans versus off distance-based plans. But again, chatting to a coach, we can chat afterwards. That's going to be really helpful. Everyone's going to be very different, but there's a different style, time-based.
Thanks, Coach. Do we have any other folks in the audience here who have questions? Otherwise, we can take some from online.
Yeah, online. Question probably for Dr. Shelby. I'm coming from the UK on Thursday, so I have 3 days prior to the race. How best to cope with jet lag, and what should I do and not do for the race?
It'll kind of work in your favor because you'll be waking up earlier, coming here from the UK. One of my favorite things to think about is to really, when you get on the plane, think about limiting alcohol, limiting caffeine, make sure you're hydrating, fueling yourself well, do all those things. Don't go get some light exposure during the day. But I don't work for this app at all, but there's an app called Time Shifter that's really great. And you put in your flights, and it will tell you when you want to get light exposure, when you want dark, when you want to consider shifting your sleep schedule, because there are ways to adjust your sleep schedule in advance if you want to become kind of hyper-focused on it. I don't recommend it for everyone, because sometimes people become a little too obsessed with it, and I don't think that's so healthy. But Time Shifter is a really great app. Be careful with the caffeine. I don't necessarily recommend melatonin, because we do use that for jet lag for some people, but you don't want to necessarily start playing around with melatonin if you've never used it before.
Not related to jet lag, but if you're traveling for any race, whether it's abroad or domestic, always make sure like your absolute essentials in a carry-on. Don't check that bag that has the shoes you absolutely need for race day or your everything bagel with peanut butter. You want to have, if you absolutely feel like you need to have it on race day, pack it with you in a carry-on.
Unless you want to live on the edge. We have a question from the audience right here.
I'm coming. Hold on.
There you go. Hello, only my first time too in November. Question for Mohammed. During your training, you usually have a rest day. Do you usually use that day for strength training, or do you actually just don't do anything?
No, that's a really, really great question. Usually rest day is exactly what the name entails, absolute rest. It's your body's chance to kind of absorb all of that training stimulus. So you don't want to go from running, which breaks down your muscles, to doing some sort of strength training, which further breaks down your muscles. Generally, the rule of thumb is for strength training, anything that's going to continue to load the body, you want to do that on either a shorter run day, like a recovery day, and kind of incorporate it into your active recovery, or do it on a kind of a shorter run, maybe a higher intensity day, but lower mileage. That way, you can still take advantage of the rest day to completely recover.
Thank you, Mohammed. One more question from the audience here, and I think we can take one more online.
Hi, Morgan. It's my first marathon. What are your thoughts on the shakeout run the day before?
Huge fan. I love it. It just makes you feel, for myself personally, it feels a little relaxing. You can kind of get that leg, both those legs moving, a little bit of a de-stressor. You can still run because you've been tapering. So I think it's great. Again, if this is your first marathon, you're not going to have done a shakeout before, but I would, if you attempted to do one, there's loads of them, but just make sure that you're not going too fast. That's going to be really important. You're going to be feeling good because you're tapered, but relax and just a few miles early in the morning. It's great.
The psychologist in me loves them because it's just good for your brain, gets the wiggles out. They're great.
And there's, if this is your first marathon, there's a lot of run clubs that we have here in New York City. They host shakeout runs. I'm not a marathoner, but I have joined a shakeout run. They're fun. I highly recommend. And can we take one more question?
Right. Last question is, what is each of y'all's favorite part of the TCS New York City Marathon course? And you cannot say the finish line.
I was going to say the finish line as well. I'll go last.
I can't speak as a runner, but I came up last year to support my younger sister who was running the race, and she at the time lived in Brooklyn. So I kind of hung out in Brooklyn in a neighborhood that I was familiar with from visiting her, and absolutely loved it. It was really, really cool to see, the different vibe in each borough. So I got to see it here on the upper east side, and then seeing it in Brooklyn and seeing kind of the variety of the culture and the vibe and the different aspects of how different boroughs represent was really, really cool. So I just really liked seeing it in multiple places from a spectator's perspective.
This will be my 7th, I think, New York marathon. So, and it's always the same. I mean, every year is a little different with how I experience it, but my favorite part of the course, which is love it or hate it, is the Queensboro Bridge. And it's a hill. It is what it is. But it's quiet. All you hear are the runners. But then you get to the last third of a mile, quarter of a mile, and you just start hearing shh, and crowds get louder and louder and louder until you get onto the other side and you're in Manhattan, and then you turn and you're on First Ave, and it's like waves of people. It's amazing. So enjoy the quiet, because then you're going to be rewarded with that cheering.
That was actually going to be my answer. So I'm going to go for my second favorite, which is the start. It is amazing. You've got the cannons that are going off. That's incredible. You have the sound of Frank Sinatra. You've got nervous people all around you. When you get up, it doesn't matter which level of the Verrazano you are on. If you're on the top, it's incredible. You have an amazing view. If you're on the lower level, it's a little quieter, which is actually quite nice. But you have this beautiful view over the city. And then when you get to the other side of the bridge, you can see the 3 different color waves going off in their own little direction. And you've only got 24 and a bit miles left once you're over the Verrazano Bridge. And it's just such an exciting part of the course. But it's all amazing. None of it's not awesome. You're gonna love all of it.
It is all amazing, and we don't just have the best marathon, we have the best crowds. We're definitely not biased when we say that. So folks, our panel has come to an end. Thank you so much for being here for the past hour. Congratulations, as I said, again, for getting into the marathon. A whole lot of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people don't get in, so congratulations on that. Want to thank Coach Gemma, Dr. Shelby, and Mohammed for being here and for sharing their expertise with us. Please feel free to go back to the recording on our New York Roadrunners YouTube page if you'd like to watch this again, or any of the other panels that we've done. The last and fourth panel for this series will be on October 24th. Feel free to join us here in person or online. And as a parting gift, actually, I also want to thank Coach Steve, AJ, who's making sure our live stream is working well and that recording is going to go up perfectly, and our colleagues here at the Run Center who are always very gracious with us. And as a parting gift, we have free energy gels, compliments of New York Roadrunners, maximum 1 box per runner. Please enjoy.